Good morning and welcome to ICCB Adult Education Administrator Webinar Day. We're happy to have you all together with us today virtually. A few housekeeping pieces before we get started. All attendees are in listen-only mode, so you're muted. But if you lose your audio or video connection, try exiting the webinar and entering again. And there's also a call-in number there on your screen. And if you have audio issues, then call in and join us in that way. This session will be recorded and will be on the Excellence in Adult Ed website by tomorrow. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Kathy Olson-Tracy.
Welcome everybody to our first ever full administrators meeting happening virtually. I realize that today we should be together, learning from each other, networking with our peers, but our new reality is kind of making that impossible. I know that the work that you've done over the past several weeks has been hard. It has been incredibly difficult to flip your programs overnight to a distance learning. I know you're worried about your students. I know you're worried about your staff, your family members, and when we get back to some form of a new reality. So with that in mind, please know that you have all of the resources of the ICCB to help you. Do not hesitate to reach out to us as you navigate this new normal that we have for a short time. And I'm looking forward to being able to get back together with everybody. With that in mind, the Service Center Network has put together a wonderful day of very relevant information for everybody. We are starting with a webinar from our peers and colleagues, people who are doing some very innovative projects and programs to help with student enrollment and retention and even recruiting. So we're going to work with our peers. After that, we'll have a webinar about the CASAS and the TABE. I know you're all very anxious and excited to see what that looks like. And then we're going to wrap up our day with how to support students at a distance and what do those support pieces look like. I will be here throughout the day, but I would hope that if you have any questions specific to the ICCB after all of these webinars, you jot them down and I will take the questions and answers at the end of the day. I don't want to interfere with the work that our presenters have done putting their information together. And with that, I will be quiet and let our wonderful presenters, we have Lin Birkett, Dan Deasy, Maggie Wolf, Greg Baglow, and Don Fenton, all working with you today. So enjoy the first of the webinar series.
Good morning. So this is Lin Birkett, and I am with Lincoln Land Community College. I'm the Adult Education Director. I have been at Lincoln Land for about 23 years, and as the director for, I don't know, since 2006, whatever many years that is. So I do want to say that I hope you and your families are well and you're coping as best as you can in this given situation. But with that, let's talk about enrollment. We can go to the next slide, Sarah. So I do want to begin the discussion by saying that technically Lincoln Land has always been an open enrollment versus a fixed enrollment program. You know, in DAISY and in reporting, there's open and fixed, but within open, there was also managed enrollment. And many years ago, like most programs who were in open enrollment, we moved to the managed enrollment format. I want to talk a little bit about why we did that, but I really want to start, I think, with the positive news of why we have done what we've done, why we moved to open enrollment. I mean, I'm going to get to that, I'm sorry, but the end result of that, so that, well, I'm just going to start with that. Our declining enrollment has been a little less than the state's percentage. You know, the state has been declining in enrollment. We all know that. And Lincoln Land certainly has also seen a decline in enrollment in adult education, not quite at the rate that the state has, but certainly we have seen that. However, in moving back to this open enrollment format in this year through second quarter, we were an 18% ahead of FY19 through second quarter for enrollment, and almost 10% ahead in attendance hours, and over FY18, much more than that, like closer to even 40% of an improvement. So, we know that this has worked, and so I just kind of wanted to open that before I talk to you about why we made the changes and what we've done differently. I wish I had grabbed my old managed enrollment folder before we left campus, but I didn't think I would need it, and so I didn't bring that with me. But for those of you that will remember, it was a study on the different types of enrollment, so open and fixed and managed, at a time when the focus for intake was really to prepare our incoming students as much as possible before they sat in a classroom. Additionally, and maybe more so the focus, was to bring students in cohorts and at intervals of anywhere from 4 weeks to 8 weeks, or even sometimes 16 weeks. Our program used both the 4-week and the 8-week at different times. It's important to note that our college is structured such that we have our main campus in Springfield, but then we have 5 outreach centers that are quite rural in Illinois, so they're anywhere from 30 to 60 miles away from our main campus. Our coordinators are based on our main campus and travel to those assigned outreach centers for support and registration and orientation, testing, all of those types of things. So schedulings of registrations and orientations was always a challenge in our program. And using that managed format definitely made scheduling easier, and it seemed a more efficient way to bring students in. But as you can assume, enrollment numbers are lower in our outreach centers, and so we used a 4-week enrollment period versus an 8-week there, because we needed to keep more students in the seats at the time. So the positive impact on intake for that was that we could schedule a robust registration and orientation on a fixed schedule for what would be a larger number of students who had been on a list to enroll since the last enrollment period. The negative included that students had to wait sometimes a month to get in if they missed the enrollment date. And the other negative is that classes would have low enrollments because students had either graduated or were dropping out. And we would react if we could by going ahead and bringing some more students in before the next enrollment period. But typically, staffing was a barrier, and we also felt like we needed to give this process a chance. Excuse me. We had also spent a considerable amount of time providing professional development to our instructional staff on developing lesson plans for those 4 to 8 week sessions, because they would have a cohort of students to work with for a designated amount of time before new students were introduced into the class. And our instructors liked this. They felt like they had a better opportunity to get to know groups of students at one time and focus on the needs of one group for an extended amount of time. This was another perk of managed enrollment. So if their class attendance would drop, either from graduations or just students dropping out, and we pushed to bring in more students prior to that enrollment date, we would often get pushback and even criticism for not following through on the paradigm that we had been promoting. So it was really a give and take of, what seemed to make sense and what would be best for a student, and getting them prepared to bring them in, having them work with a group of students in a cohort where they kind of gelled together and gelled with their instructor at one time. And would that increase our test scores, which of course was another major push for this, was to make sure that we were meeting or exceeding the federal targets as far as post-testing goes. So that was the rationale behind all of that. And it did work for a while. But then there were other factors that came into the mix that started to make this, for us, something that wasn't working as well. We definitely saw an impact on enrollment numbers because students, wouldn't often wait to get in, and therefore we were seeing an impact on attendance hours. So the next slide, please. So as I just stated, obviously one of the issues that we came along with this was that students had to wait too long to get in class. If they called or walked in to sign up and they had just missed the enrollment period, they were given the next date, but it could be anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks from when they had when they were inquiring. when we were full and our classes, we had a waiting list, we didn't like this, but it was just something, it was just part of it. This is how it worked. And we just we stayed engaged with students during that time, but they would often have to wait much too long to get into a class. We also, in general, we would have a loss of potential students from an initial call to an enrollment day. This happened, this can go back 30 years, right? Someone calls to enroll, and we get them set up for an enrollment day and registration and orientation. And from that time to that date, they don't show up. And so that was happening anyway. And now you add this extended time frame, and we were really struggling with that. Then you bring in the challenge of the tab 11-12 on the enrollment process, which I'm not going to get into the weeds on that. We all know the frustrations with that, and so there's no sense in rehashing it. But what it certainly did to an orientation for us was, lengthen the time. We had set up these very robust orientations that included the assessment, and now the testing part was taking up to 3 hours in addition to what we were trying to do in an orientation piece. So they were waiting longer to get in. By the time they got in, they were sitting with us for up to 4 to 4.5 hours, obviously with breaks, but definitely a difficult time. There was way too much information. You could just see the glossy-eyed students sitting in seats and kind of the sense of overwhelmingness. And we weren't getting them in a seat in a classroom, right? There was just too long of a time frame from the initial contact to getting their seat in a seat. And so all of this was causing our enrollment to decline even more. FY18 especially was just a disaster. And that meant a loss of money, frankly, because the way the funding formula is with enrollment and attendance hours and enrollment hours, when you see such a major decline, you're going to lose money. So we had to react. Next slide, please. So we sat down, now it's been well over a year ago, with our team, and we looked at everything we were doing to come up with strategies to address our challenges. This is just one piece. There were many pieces, and many of my colleagues this morning are going to talk about other pieces that they addressed, and we've done much of the same. But I'm here today to talk about getting back to that open enrollment. And so that's what we did. We just looked at, we went back to our good years. What were we doing in those good years where we had students, in on a more consistent basis, where our classrooms were full, where students were better engaged, and what were we doing? And one of those things was that we were basically just bringing them in as they needed. And I do want to just quickly state that when I first started teaching, and that's when I came into adult ed, I was an ABE-ASC teacher, we had what I would call on-demand enrollment, where there were no coordinators. So I'm teaching a class and a student comes to my door and knocks on the door and says, hey, I'm kind of wanting to get into GED class. And I stop what I'm doing and bring this student in and stick them in the back of the classroom and give them a test and keep teaching. And, it was just a whole different thing all those many, many years ago. We would never do that today. So we're not talking about going back to kind of on-demand enrollment. But what we did is we created an online enrollment form. It is within our Office 365 suite, and there's a link to that form on our webpage. So anytime when a student makes an initial contact now, whether it's via phone or they walk into one of our centers, they're either put on the website to go ahead and fill out the form, or if they're on the phone, they're given the link. If a student is uncomfortable with that, we certainly, will still have them come in and meet with us to do it, but most people are not having any problem doing this. The enrollment form is exactly what our enrollment form looks like on paper, and they fill it out and hit submit, and they get this immediate satisfaction that I called today, or I came in today and I wanted to sign up for class, and I'm signed up, I'm in. Now, obviously we know there's more they have to do. They need to take their testing. And I'm talking about the ABE-ASC students here. Our ESL students do a little bit of a different intake, but it's very, so they can still fill out the online form. But the student has that immediate satisfaction of, I have now registered, I'm in. We are now using online TABE, and we have that on main campus and at our outreach centers. So as soon as they submit that form, Our staff daily can see who has submitted them, can print them off, can contact the student immediately, set up their testing time, which can be that day or the next day, because since it's online and we have staff in all the centers, the outreach centers have, assessment staff who can now put students on the computer and get them through their TABE, and they can take that. That's just another piece. It's back in the student's hand. As soon as you take that test, we can get you in class. It also gives us an opportunity to get students on Remind. We use remind.com because that initial point of contact has that information on it. And that keeps the communication going between the coordinator and the student to get the testing done, as well as to then come in for the final piece, which is meeting with their coordinator, getting the welcome packet, has a lot of information about the orientation pieces that we used to do in kind of a more robust situation, and now it's more in a packet situation. And then many of the orientation activities become part of the early part of their classroom and relationship building with the instructor. What we know is that the students who are staying in class are not staying in because they had a really positive registration orientation experience. They're staying in because they've had a positive experience with their instructor. So the sooner we can get them in a seat in that classroom, working with that teacher, the better chance we know we have of keeping them. And it's working. Again, if I go back to the increase in our enrollment and our attendance hours from FY20 to 19 is quite good, but going all the way back to 18, it's just amazing, the difference. So we just feel like this one little step has made a huge difference in being able to serve more students at one time. And our instructors have also adapted beautifully. Listen, they don't want to teach to an empty class. And so they have just figured out, I'm going to have more students coming in at a more regular basis. And they have, we've worked with them. They've done professional development on this. And the group we have now has embraced this and realizes that this is what's working for us at this time. I think that is all I have, guys. It's hard to do this from a distance when I'm not seeing faces. I can't tell if I've.
Lynn, you have a question?
Yeah.
From Val Harris wants to know, does the enrollment form collect what is needed for Daisy?
Yes, Val, it is exactly the form that we use, our paper form. I mean, while it may not look like it, from a formatted standpoint, it has every single question, which of course is based on the ICCB required form. So yes, we can, and we print those off. I get that we're still using paper, but this was not about not using paper, right? This was about getting people in faster. So because the other thing is there still has to be that final point of contact with a student. And at that point, what we get, Val, is their social security number and their signature. We don't ask for the social security number in the online form. We just don't feel like it's probably secure enough to do that. And plus we have to get a signature anyway. So we get that at that time.
And Christine Hutchison wants to know if you would be willing to share your welcome packet.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely will. As soon as we can get back to campus, we will do that. I don't have one that I can send electronically here, but yes, I've made a note to do that, Christine. And what I'll do is just share it maybe with, maybe it makes sense to share it with the PD network or whatever, so they can get it to whomever wants it. I don't know, but anyway, yes, Christine, we can do that.
This is Kathy. I have a very quick question. Is there a way for us to gather all the resources people are asking, and I can send them out on one listserv so that we can get everybody the resources they want?
Yes, Kathy.
Yeah.
This is Sarah. If Lynn, if you could send that to me, and then as other people ask for resources, then we'll collect them all and have Kathy send that out to the listserv.
Lynn, okay, and there's a couple more questions, Lynn.
Sure.
Hang on. If you register students after the midterm of the class, does that create problems with student reporting for apportionment?
Well, okay, so a couple of things. We don't deal with the midterm because it's not fixed and it's open, but also we do not claim any apportionment because all of our programming is done with the grant money. So I know some colleges, use some institutional money and then they are able to apply, do the reimbursement, but we do not.
And then how is the online enrollment formatted? Is it a PDF or an actual online form through your program's website?
Okay, so now you're getting technical on me and I don't know if I can answer this.
PDF means you can't change it. Actually, online means that they can fill it out online and submit it.
They fill it out online and submit it. It's through Office 365 forms. So that's all I can. I'll try to get the technical information to get that out to you, but I can also share the form with you guys. But it's yeah. So they go. The link literally takes them to this form directly. The link from our website, and they can fill it out right there on their computer or their phone. It's actually also got a mobile app, so it can be done on the phone as well, very easily. And then there's a submit button, and then that comes. We can access those in our office.
Okay, and what type of orientation activities do the students do in order to make an initial relationship with their instructor?
Oh gosh, that's really a long answer, to be honest, but with the welcome packet will include a lot of that. If that's okay, we'll go ahead and include that in there, because we still, one, it's an ICCB requirement that we, provide an orientation that that's appropriate and that has everything in it that the student needs, and so we're still doing that. We just really used to like, and I still like the idea of being in front of a group of students and being able to, get a lot of information out and have some activities together, but that just isn't working right now. There's people need to get in now. And so we're still giving that information and there are still activities, but we even used to do the career assessments in our orientation. Those are done in classrooms now. So I will definitely, give that out, but I would take up way too much time.
Okay, and were you able to measure the academic progress with students in the managed versus the open enrollment that you discussed?
Yes. So, I'm so glad, because I meant to say that and I didn't. So thank you for asking that question. So we had always met or exceeded our federal targets up until last year. And, I'm going to blame it on the table 11, 12. I'm just going to flat out say it. But we, have always done that. However, we've also in some years, not only just met the rolled up target, but met most of the individual targets up until I would say again, 17 and 18 and 19, where we definitely were happy that we had some really robust exceeding targets that helped us make the overall. So I guess the answer is, what we're not seeing this year, we were on track until this disaster to meet the targets again. So going from last year where we were not meeting them to this year where we are, and we're still dealing with table 11, 12, tells me that getting students in faster and having them get instruction for longer periods of time is more beneficial than having them work in the cohorts of students, in smaller groups, so that it doesn't seem to matter. We were still going to make our target. We aren't now, but we were. We haven't had students in class since March 6th, because the week after that was spring break, and then that was it. We were done. So.
Okay, there's a couple more questions, and I know we need to move on to the next person, but have you tried doing the online form with ESL students? And okay.
No, go ahead.
And then remind also, how do you set up the classrooms for the new students? I put all GED students in one big class. How do you do that?
Okay, so ESL, yes, all of our students are able to fill out that form if they want to. And most of our ESL students have also done that. And then our ESL coordinator, gets back with them. But they still come in to do the testing with one of the coordinators, because first of all, CASAS isn't online, and that's what we use. But also, it's just a different, it's just different. And
okay,
that hasn't been a problem.
Okay. Someone asked, you said you use Office 365 product for online enrollment form. They use Qualtrics, but they might lose this soon. So that was an interesting thing for them to be able to look into.
Okay, good.
Anyway.
Yeah. And what was the second question about it was after the ESL question? I'm sorry. Remind. So each of our instructors have Remind with their particular class. So the coordinator has it initially from the submission form to reach out to the student, and they try to call them. But I mean, you know, a lot of times our students would just rather text, and that's fine. But then each instructor for each class has their own Remind account. So we don't have like all of our students on one Remind account. So when we need to send out something in mass, you know, our instructors are told what to send, and then they send it out to their students.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple more questions that deal with the TABE, but the TABE will be covered in the next session at 10:30. So we'll deal with that. You can ask those questions during the TABE session. So go ahead and next person, please.
And if I could
Thanks,
just interject real quickly before the next presenter, this is Sarah from the Professional Development Network, and I'm going to put a plug in that if you are not sure how to use Remind or you're not familiar with that, there was a webinar that took place recently from the Professional Development Network covering that. It is archived and housed on the Excellence in Adult Ed website. So if you want to send your teachers there, or if you want to go look at it, it's there for you. Also, having a little time to reflect on Kathy's question about resources, in this case, Lin's orientation packet. We will put all of those, we can have Kathy send it out, but we'll also house all of those resources that we gather with these archived webinars on the Excellence Adult Ed website so that you'll have them in one place and everybody can access them.
Good morning. My name is Dan Deasy. I manage the adult education programs at College of DuPage, and I am going to be speaking about one of the marketing tools that we use in our overall kind of marketing toolbox to recruit students. So this is not speaking to retention or classroom activities, but just to get students in the door. Like many of the programs in the state over the last, I'd say, year and a half, College of DuPage Adult Education has experienced an enrollment decline. I would say, you know, term to term, when we're looking at year over year, we would lose about 5 to 10% of our enrollment in adult ed. Some for very obvious reasons, much of it anecdotal, but so we were trying to come up with some ways, some different tools to engage students and get them back into our program. So next slide, please. Like most programs, we have a whole host of different ways that we try to market and recruit students, anywhere from multilingual print flyers, which we distribute throughout specific neighborhoods and through our partner organizations and networks. We have pages in our COD catalog, which still goes out. Print copies still go out to about 300,000 households in our county. So there's a very wide distribution. We use web pages, network of internal, external partners. We have formal referrals set up with many of our partners where if folks are coming in for services and they need adult education assistance, they're referred to our college. Obviously, heavy word of mouth. That's one of the main marketing strategies. Students are, you know, talk to each other about program opportunities and their experience in our programs. That helps quite a bit. We use newspaper ads, radio PSAs, presentations, info sessions, social media ads on Facebook and Twitter. And the one I'm going to talk about today is geofencing. My first experience with geofencing was not from a person who is doing marketing, but I was more of a victim of the marketing strategy. So my daughter enrolled in one of our continuing education courses in the summer. It was a criminal justice class on CSI. So, you know, the science of crime scene investigation. She was interested in that. So I signed her up. It was a 2-week class. She loved it. Shortly afterwards, though, I started getting postcards in the mail specific to recruiting my daughter to take CSI programs at colleges and institutions across the country. I also started getting, because I was the one who registered and used my information, I started getting ads that were popping up on my phone that were specific to this CSI. So since my daughter's a minor, I got very concerned, thinking that our own internal marketing department was selling our list of students to other institutions. So I contacted our marketing department. They reassured me that this was not the case, that other institutions were using geofencing strategies to get these marketing lists specific to coursework and programs, and then do advertising, a campaign of advertising. So very creepy to me in the beginning, but as I started applying it to our own marketing strategy, I saw the real benefits of it. Next slide. So essentially, geofencing uses a cell phone, essentially a participant's cell phone, and looks at a particular address, series of addresses, or a location which is preset, so that it could be a building, it could be a block, it could be a town. But once a person with a cell phone walks into that fenced-in area, they are now in this pool of people that will potentially receive information on your program or your marketing. So next slide. So one back, please. So in our case, we had selected multiple, our ad campaign using geofencing was specific to our ELA population, potential ELA population. Our program consists of around 65 to 70% ELA. So it's our largest segment of our service population. So essentially what we had done is we took specific communities based on demographics, and provided a vendor who was responsible for the geofencing campaign. Our ads, our specific bilingual ads in English and Spanish, and we gave them a listing of locations, addresses within a town. So we gave them the specific information where they were going to set up these geofences. Anyone with a cell phone entering one of these locations would then get our ad for ELA coursework for that particular term pushed to a platform on their phone. And there are multiple different platforms that these ads get pushed to. So next slide. And this is just an infographic that kind of explains in pictures what this means. So you target a location or street address, building, or a wider location. You set up a virtual fence or a series of locations that you want to push out ads to for folks walking into that area. You can choose, it's very, you can get very detailed. You can choose specific demographics who you want to reach. And it's can be very granular if you want it to. And then for any of those people that meet the demographics that you're looking for, that enter into one of the geofence spaces, they will start receiving ads on their mobile device through multiple platforms. And you set the period of time essentially where that occurs. And in our scenario for spring term, we had done this, and we selected essentially a month where we were pushing these ads, and we selected the time frame based on when our pre-testing and placement testing and enrollment process was going to be going on. So I'll speak a little bit more about the detail later on, but it can be used for multiple ad campaigns, from very broad campaigns, which is what we had done, to again, very granular, very specific ad campaigns. Next slide. I mentioned some of the social media platforms. I think in my research that there were about over 200 different social media platforms or websites that ads were pushed through. So some obvious or major examples I listed here. So Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, if you're on specific web pages. So if you have a Facebook account and you had entered one of our preset geofencing locations, you are going to be receiving ads popping up on your Facebook account, advertising our program and enrollment in a very simplistic way. Again, we did it in English and Spanish for the populations we were trying to reach. Next slide. So again, how the process works is we provided targeted locations, addresses, areas to the geofencing company. We provided the marketing content, so we designed the ads in collaboration with our college's marketing department. And then once we provided those ads, the company tracks the number of ads that are actually pushed to mobile devices through social media and web platforms, tracks the number of clicks, so how many people actually take an interest in the ad and click on the ad to get more information. And then it tracks actions beyond that. So it tracks the number of people who have received that ad, clicked on the ad for more information, that actually go to our website for more specific information, or actually visit our campus. So one of the things that what we do to track is that we, in addition to the geofencing marketing areas where we're pushing out ads, we also provide the address of kind of the action address. So which would be our campus or offsite campuses. So if a student is tracked going into that space and they get those ads pushed to them, if that cell phone that they own comes into our campus, it tracks that visit. So we could see the number of folks that are getting these ads pushed to them, how many of them actually visited campus to either get more information or participate in a testing and registration session. So some of the detail, it gets very fine. Next slide. This is a sample of our spring campaign. So these are some of the addresses and businesses that we provided to the company. And you could see the addresses, the first column. The number of impressions that's the number of ads that were pushed out into cellular devices. So you could see that in some areas there were quite a few, and that's, I think, so the first address that was put in there is the pin for a neighborhood or a larger neighborhood. So that's why there's more impressions than some of the other locations. The number of clicks are the number of people who actually just clicked on that ad. So they don't necessarily have to come to our website or visit the campus, but they took an interest in that ad and clicked on it. And you can see the percentage of click-through rate, the CTR there, it's fairly low. So the number of ads in the first row, 45,000 plus ads, we got 82 clicks out of it. So you can look at that as, that's a pretty low percentage. And then total actions, that is when an action would be someone actually clicking on our website, going straight to the website or visiting the campus. So they may have looked at the ad and then gone straight to, based on the information, come to our campus for more information or testing, or they may have gone into our website to get more information about our program. So this is kind of the some of the information that the company provides back. There are more specific data points that these companies can provide, and it can, again, be very detailed, but there are some limitations to it. So next slide. And this is just a quick snapshot of the campaign. So you can see that it ran from January 7th to February 5th on top there. And this is just some of the macro data points that we wanted to look at. So total number of impressions in the campaign. So the ads that were pushed out to mobile devices are over 200,000. 381 clicks. So 381 folks had an interest in the ad and clicked on it. 38 of those visited our website for information, and then we had 342 people that received the ad actually come to campus. So they came to the Glen Ellen campus for more information or to register. Next slide. So limitations, I left this blank because the limitations that we experienced may not be the same for every program. So for us, one of the things that we could not track in this go through, and they said they would work on this if we continue to do business with this particular company, is that while we can track the number of people that go to our website and we can track the number of people that came to our main campus, we couldn't track the number of phone calls that were coming through. So we did provide a phone number within our initial ad, not the click through to the website, but our initial ad. So if someone clicked on that and just called, we wouldn't have any way to track that, at least in this initial data request from the company. So our feeling is that we had more people that were calling for information versus visiting our website or coming to our campus that we could actually track. So that piece of the return on investment for the marketing campaign, we're missing. The other thing is our mistake. So one of the limitations is, the data that you get out is as good as the data that you put in, obviously. And when we set up the geofence, as far as the visitation, so if someone wants to visit our campus for more information, we provided the address for the main campus location. However, we have 33 community sites, and we failed to provide kind of a glaring error on our part here in hindsight, but we failed to provide some of those sites at our off-campus location. So for instance, if we were doing an ad campaign in Addison, one of the communities that we serve, we have multiple locations where we provide direct instruction in Addison, and folks can go directly to those sites to register. They don't have to come on campus. They can go to those sites to take the test and register. So we're missing that, those pieces or those fences that we set up for the visits. So our data back is a bit skewed. And if we choose to move forward with this, once we get back to normal, we're going to be providing those extra pieces of data into it so we can get better information on our return on investment. I was pleased with the 342, or I forgot what the number was, 300 plus students that actually visited the campus based on the ad. Even though the number of ads that were pushed out seems huge compared to the number of people that we get in, I was still pretty happy with just that one piece. Another limitation is the expense. It's not a cheap process. So for the campaign itself, for the 1 month campaign, we spent a little over $2,000. We were subsidized by our formal marketing department within the college, since we are a credit program. They have marketing budget for all the credit programs that are within our institution. So we did take a piece of that and subsidized the cost of this campaign. So so some of those limitations are, it may not work for every program. The costs may be too much for the return on investment. And it really depends on the structure of your program. One other thing though that we think is pretty cool about it that we are exploring right now is I mentioned the granular aspect. While this campaign was more of a broad-based campaign for some of our core programs, for instance, if you're doing a manufacturing IET and recruiting is pretty difficult, which it is, you could target, if you have an industrial park that's heavy in manufacturing within your service district, you could target those specific manufacturing companies by putting those addresses. So the employees within that workspace, if they bring their cell phone into the workspace, which many allow, they are going to get pushed ads about manufacturing programs, or continue their education or upscaling within manufacturing. And you could do that for a whole host of different activities or programs. You could also use it to recruit faculty. So if you're short on faculty and there's a professional development, in-person professional development for adult education or adult educators, you could push out ads for your specific, let's say, adjunct faculty needs to recruit within that, anyone who has a cell phone within that particular building where that is being held at, you could push those ads. So there's a lot more we could do with this, and we've been learning from this process. But again, it is, if you have the means and if it suits your program, it is something that we find fairly effective, and it's a good tool within that overall marketing strategy. That's it.
And there's a couple of questions.
Okay.
What is the approximate cost of geofencing?
So when we ran, and I think it may vary from company to company, the company that our marketing unit contracted with, we did a 1 month campaign, and it was a little over $2,000. So I think it's going to depend on the length of your campaign, the scope of the campaign. So if you want to do the entire county versus a couple of targeted neighborhoods, businesses, those types of things, it's going to affect the costs of the actual campaign itself. So and then if you look at return on investment, again, I think our data falls far short because we weren't able to track the phone calls, and then we were only looking at our main campus for folks that were actually coming in to visit. Even with that limited data, the cost per student engage with the program is around $5 per student. I believe that's much less. That's based again on incomplete data that I have, but when it shakes out, the costs that we put in versus the number of actions, which would mean engagement with our program, it's a little over $5 per student. I believe that would be less if we track the phone calls and our off-campus locations.
Okay, so how did you select the geofencing company that you chose to go with?
Fortunately, that was an easy decision for our program because we let our marketing department handle that. So they're responsible for contracting external vendors for marketing campaigns. That's kind of out of our hands. We provide the budget and we give the go-ahead whether this company suits our needs, but they are the ones that have the relationship with these external marketing companies, and they kind of do the initial legwork to vet them. So by the time we agreed to do it, they had vetted several companies, selected one for us. We got to meet with that company to see if it was a good fit, and then we proceeded from there and just we had our cost and provided a budget, and then we worked with that company and our marketing department to kind of frame what data we wanted back.
Okay, and finally, did you see an increase in enrollment?
We did. So this past spring, that's the campaign that I was talking about, and again, I can't obviously solely attribute it to the geofencing portion of the campaign, but our enrollment of this spring versus the previous fiscal year spring, it was up about 8%, and that was mainly in ELA. We experienced a downturn actually in ABE, GED, and again, anecdotally for several reasons, but our ELA enrollment increased quite a bit, and overall our enrollment was up a little under 8% over previous year.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Hi, this is Dawn from Illinois Central College Adult Education Program, and I hope all of you are well today. Go to the next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about our ICC small circle of friends. We were staying within our comfort zone, happy within our area planning council. We had met our targets, and then two things happened that happened to everyone. The budget crisis happened, so that we had to scale back our offerings, forcing other small GED programs to pop up in the area. And then the WIOA mandates happened. Next slide. So we were forced into this new arranged marriage with our core partners, and through that we attended our cross-training events, mandated referrals, back and forth reporting, and it was all down to relationships, but we were only getting a few referrals from our core partners. What we found was that the required and other partners demonstrated this greater need for services, and so we were new opportunities kind of popped up, how we could maybe share some of these problems. Next slide. So we had to step out of our comfort zone. There was a few things that, like I said, forced us to do this. One of them was the WIOA mandates and the budget crisis. So we decided to divide and conquer with our coordinators. We joined groups like the Hope Network, Home for All, which is a homeless consortium, county provider groups, and employer assistance groups. By reaching out to these extra groups we would meet, the networking was just so much better. We were in such a hurry to try to raise our enrollment that we finally had to just find out some of these other places that nobody was touching. We found great success working with the probation officers. Their clients had to be in a GED class. DHS TANF still is my highest enrollment help, if you will. And I say high school counselors, and sometimes people go, oh my gosh, you can't do that. We had a lot of high school counselors come to us and call us saying, I don't know what to do with this student. Do you have any, could you take them? And while we weren't marketing to these high school counselors, they did reach out to us for as an alternative when they were at the end of their rope, not being able to keep their students in. We volunteered to attend open houses and resource fairs. My team and I went to a lot of these things, and even though some of them didn't pan out better than others, we were still getting outside of our comfort zone. Next slide. So what are we going to do with all these new friends? We were going to all these different meetings, and so we started to really be quiet and just listen and take a lot of notes. There was a conversation to learn a little bit more about their agency needs. When you stop and listen to others, everybody wants to talk about themselves and share their problems and their needs. And I went back after these meetings and I mapped out goals and I found some commonalities. And so the next time we met, I shared some of these solutions that could help both agencies. Next slide. And so how do you sell it to someone how do you tell an agency, hey, I've got the just be all end all solution to all of our problems? Before I talked about selling it, we had other pop-up programs in our area that were taking away our students. And some of these agencies I was talking to about taking their students back to the college, they were advertising, we don't have a 3-hour test to get into our program. That really hurt last year when we were doing some of those outreach. What am I going to do with all of this? So when you're selling it to some of these area agencies, offer to put their clients in first before the next enrollment. That really helped us out a lot. I'm going to stop here for just a second. There's some background noise.
Dan, can you mute yourself? Okay, go ahead.
All right, thanks so much. I was getting feedback. I couldn't hear myself. We offered to put them on our enrollment list ahead of time and ahead of the public. We were the only big GED funded program in the area and had all these great offerings through ICAPS and transitions to college. And so we would talk to all these agencies and tell them that I can put your clients first. We talked about different plans. We have future plans to use TargetX, which is a customer relationship management system for enrollment. I know a couple of the other colleges today have talked a little bit about that online format to get students in a little bit quicker. And we want to up that a little bit by having that referral agency be able to fill that out and get us the information that we need to get the enrollment started a little quicker. Our WIOA does not have a universal enrollment form at this time. And so we're taking it upon ourselves at the college to have this system that agencies can go into or students can go into and go ahead and get signed up. We offered bus tickets to their clients so that they could get to our campus. When you meet with an agency, sometimes it's like, what can you do for us? And when you hand them, 20 to 50 bus tickets and say, hey, I want you to offer these to your clients so they can get to our campus. But then you have to follow up with that. That's one of the biggest things is following through on your promises and then following up. And the follow-up part takes a lot of time. And so we would call these agencies and say, hey, how many bus tickets have you given out? And can you give us the names so we can both partner together by making sure that that student is being served correctly. We share our good news. We share that students, when they come into our program, will get a free GED, and that's huge. We've really worked hard to, number one, get the GED testing service to allow us to give the test at our college, and we got third-party grants from the community foundations and things like that to help those students get their GED and make progress. We shared our success rate and all the data that goes with that. 80% of our students were passing the GED test on the very first try. We introduced the agencies to braided funding and transitioning their clients into ICAPs. So that was a great idea through some of our agencies that had community block grants.
9:30. They'll go for a while.
So they introduced braided funding into for their ICAP students, and that really helped out a lot. They understood that by pooling our money together and our resources, that student could go a lot farther and meet both of our metrics. Lastly, we knew that ESL was really the key to our success, and I know that across the state, ESL students are the ones that carry our ABE, ASE targets to be met. And so we decided that we would reach out to an agency group. It was called Latino Outreach at the Friendship House. And by doing that, they had a very large group of students needing services. And so we provided the teacher, and then boom, we had 20 new students in our program. And so if you can do that, if their agency has computer access and a classroom capacity, you can even do that to increase your enrollment. And by doing all these things, next slide, we increased our enrollment by 12%, and we were really on target for increasing our enrollment up to 19%. We had 152 students on the waiting list to get into that second 8-week class. And so all of these relationship building techniques really worked for us. And you do have to be quiet, and you do have to listen to their needs and then find those commonalities to help both. We are in such a big hurry in today's society. It's not easy to do that follow-up piece. So set your reminders on your calendar and really reach out to them and find out what their needs are. And that's what I have so far.
Okay, I don't see any questions right now. If I see any more come up, I'll get you at the end. Okay, Dawn?
Yep, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Dawn, this is Kathy, and I didn't have a chance to thank you and Dan and Lynn so far. And I really like the fact that your enrollment in all instances we've talked about have shown increased enrollment and increased gains. So I really appreciate the sharing of how these collaborations can do that.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I hope everybody's well and healthy. My name is Maggie Wolf, and I am the Director of Adult and Community Education at Kankakee Community College. Next slide, please. So we have something that we call integration for matriculation. So this whole theory is based on the fact that we want our students to matriculate to the college, whether that's CTE or credit side, just academic side. So we've discovered that in order to do that, we have to make sure that our students feel comfortable at all locations on the campus. So we call those touch points. So I've worked with many departments across campus to help that, to create that to happen. So we worked with recruitment. We worked with student services. We worked with really anybody who will listen. We created strong relationships. If I'm invited to a meeting, I go to a meeting. If people say that, enrollment's down at the college, I'm raising my hand. I'm saying, hey, I have people upstairs who are, trying to go to college. So I make sure that I am the voice of my students at the institution. And it's interesting because the best relationship that we have is with IT. And that's absolutely key. We actually kind of hang out together on the campus. It's kind of funny, really. Because those folks are the ones who have really helped us make this happen. So, and I'm going to let Greg, I've asked Greg to talk on behalf of what this looks like with the students, but we have things like our students register online. So if somebody's interested in the program and they call us, we send them the link. And when I mean register online, I mean from start all the way. So they're doing their application online. They register for an orientation using JotForm. We send them emails. We get them in that way. We do a having a hard time hearing everybody. So, sorry, I lost my track because I'm getting a lot of feedback here. So we I created the blah, 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 blah. So students come in, they register, they also sign up for a test. We give the tape test in the testing center. So again, that's a touch point, right? So think about that. So everything is a touch point for us. Once they're on campus, they're making relationships as we have with everybody on campus. So as a result of this, we've been able to make matriculation a lot easier to the college. Students register through Colleague on the college website. We are able to upload that information into DAISY. The impact of that has been huge. The data matches, which is great for auditing purposes. We are plugged into the college's media, so they help us recruit our students. Dan, we also use geofencing, which has really worked to our benefit. So we have been really, really excited about this entire initiative, and we have increased our matriculation. Our students get IDs, they get emails. They're part of that entire big communication that we have. They get a letter from Dr. Boyd, our president, welcoming them to the college, saying you are a KCC student. So I'm going to turn it over to Greg so we can talk about what this looks like from the student sites and see what's with the students. Next slide.
Okay, so hello everybody. So it's really kind of all started with, what Maggie's talking about, strong relationships. She has strong relationships with everybody around the college, particularly IT. She just happened to be talking one day with somebody in IT about how we wanted to kind of start moving our enrollment online. And just so happens that the KCC was switching to this CRM, through TargetX. And they invited us to join in. They said, well, why don't you guys be a part of this? We're a relatively small program, not a lot of students, 400 students a year. How much more could it cost, right? So they brought us on board with this, and I started attending the meetings. And really, it was just all about, what questions do we need to ask? So, of course, everything that, the ICCB requires through the through the AEL grant, we made sure was on that application. But of course, that doesn't need to be on the application for everybody who applies to KCC. So they really kind of decided to use us sort of as this, kickoff point for, hey, let's have 4 sort of different portals, on that application. So when people go in, they basically choose, why are you here? What program are you looking into? So are you a degree seeking student? Are you looking for high school codes through ESL? Are you an international student? Or are you a dual credit student? So once the student chooses that on the application, of course, it'll ask all the same demographic information that everybody else answers, but then it goes program specific. So it kind of takes them into a different pool there, if you will. So then once a student applies, we get an email, myself and our admin assistant get an email with, all of that information that we need for DAISY. And as Maggie mentioned, that once they apply through the application, it goes directly into Colleague. And our IT department was gracious enough to write software that is able to pull all that information from Colleague, all that demographic information from Colleague into DAISY. So that cuts down on the number of keystrokes, of course, and duplicate information that we have to put into both of those systems. Next slide, please. All right, so I guess I kind of already talked about this a little bit. It cuts down on the keystrokes, so of course we're limited in the number of people that we have doing this. Myself and our admin assistant are really the only ones who enter data. It ensures all the data matches, right? So there's no, you don't have to worry about keystroke error. So that reduces the possibility of errors. Of course, there are some questions that Colleague, that are not able to be pulled over from Colleague into DAISY, but that just really gives us that opportunity to look at the application and look at each student and make sure that we have all that information that's necessary and kind of give that's twice over without having to put all those extra keystrokes on there. An example would be, the radio button in DAISY that says, is this student, or the birth date is a student under 18, do you have a letter for this student, right? So there's no single point of failure there. We do have to go into the application and click that. It will not pull that information over, only the demographic information. Next slide, please. All right. right, so we thought this would be a good opportunity to sort of double down, right? So we have moved all of our application process online, and now let's really look at doing registration online as well. Cut down on the number of phone calls and the amount of foot traffic in our area, because with such a small group of people, we're often at meetings, you know, or observing classes, whatever we're doing. We may not be in our office. So, you know, sometimes students will come looking for us, and we just may not happen to be there, and they'll have to call or come back. So now they, through a jot form created by IT for us, now they register online on our website. Very simple process. Even if they call, we refer them to this website. Not just say, hey, go to our website and do this, but we just, hey, what's your email? Type their email address real quick and send them that link so that they can click right on. It's a two-step process. The first step is to do the application. The second step is to do the registration, where they select a date for orientation, a date and time for orientation. And then at the same time, one of the things I noticed with our orientations, I know a couple other people mentioned how, you know, orientations have become a lot longer, you know, with the TABE 11 and 12. There was no way I was going to try to do that all in one time. So I was having people come to orientation, and then I was having them sign up for testing at orientation, which that's sometimes difficult, especially as you get closer to a start date, because now you're down to a week or two, and it's tough for people to make plans in that short of time. So one of the things we were able to do in this job form is, you know, we plan our testing dates out in the testing center, of course, you know, months ahead of time now. I already have all the testing planned out for summer and scheduled for summer. So people right now can go on our website, apply to our program, register for an orientation, and then also sign up for 2 testing dates. So I have people that are already signed up for testing dates in July. And so that gives them an opportunity to kind of get connected with our program, even though we're not there. You know, we're still getting calls, of course, we're still getting emails. Hey, how do I get into class? How do I get, you know, signed up for an orientation? I don't have to be there to answer that call. People are doing that online right now while we're sitting at home. The other benefit that has is it's a centralized place for scheduling, right? So both students and the program receive an email confirmation of the time and date of that orientation and location. So they don't have to write it down. We don't have to hand out cards saying this is where you have to be, when you have to be there. We don't have to call and remind people. People don't have to call to remind us or ask for a reminder, hey, when was that I was supposed to be there? They have all that information in email. Now, of course, that's the next challenge is for them to remember that it's in their email and to be able to check that. And then the second part of that doubling down is now we're trying to move away from keeping paper files, right? Because we have limited space in our building. So we've started using Image Now to take all these electronic forms, instead of printing them all out and spending money on ink and paper. All these electronic forms are now being housed in Image Now, which is, you know, really explain it as I'm not an IT person, but obviously it's much easier to access because now we just have to go to the portal that it's saved in. It's much more secure. You know, you don't have paper files sitting in a filing cabinet. You know, maybe somebody forgets to lock the door or something like that. And then, of course, as I talked about, a safe space. A lot of information there. A little bit of different information for different scenarios. So I think that's the last slide. Go to the next
Greg,
slide.
there's a question.
Get that back to questions for Mayor Mag. Go ahead, shoot.
Greg, there's a question. I don't know which one, but I'll unmute Maggie. It causes feedback when I unmute you both. But
Okay.
Is registration done on the college system first? If so, how are the drops and class changes dealt with? And is it done automatically or manually?
No, so we're still manually doing registration. The application comes in, goes to colleague. We're able to complete that application in our office. And then from that point, our admin assistant is the one who is registering the student for the class. And so, yeah, we are still handling all of that. If I understand am I understanding the question correctly?
Well, is the registration done on the college system first, though?
So not registration per se. I mean, they are applying, right? They're doing the application. When I talk about registration, I'm talking about registering for our orientation, not the classes. So the students are not registering for classes like the same way that a college student would register for a class. Our admin
Okay,
is still doing that.
okay. That is the only question that I see. And that being said, Kathy, do you want to take over here and have anything to say?
Very quickly, I want to again thank Maggie and Greg, Dawn, and Dan and Lynn for showcasing what they're doing. The theme that you got out of this is all of them are doing something innovative and a little bit different, but their outcome is increased enrollment. And what I find very fascinating, even before we stepped into this new reality that we're living in, all of this work was happening through at a distance methods to begin with. As you've seen, Maggie and Greg, that student fills out their intake and registers an orientation before they ever come in the door, and that works beautifully. When you see Dawn's work with relationships and electronic registration, again, that is really helping our students with that no wrong door approach. And for the geofencing, we've done that. I've done that in the past. And when you work with your target audience, it really becomes a great way to reach out to people. And again, that is an expense that is allowable on your grant. Reach out to Jane to make sure that it's set up correctly, and we'll make sure that you can use your grant dollars to market your program. And Lynn has always had, again, another great program year. So I want to thank you guys for sharing this. And I hope that as a participant, you gain some ideas and some innovative ways to either recruit or hold on to your students or even get them in the door before they ever have to actually fill out paperwork. Think about the connections. If a student is marketed through geofencing, you link that geofence to the online registration for an orientation. The student fills out their intake and orientation and has scheduled everything before they even walk in the door. What a streamlined process you have for your students. So thank you for your time, everybody.
There's one more question, Greg or Maggie. Greg, I'll unmute you. The file's on Image Now, but how do you get the student's signature on the intake form?
Oh, that's a great question. That's why, yeah, we got that the first time that we presented this. But so the students, they have an electronic signature, right? Which is, according to our IT people, is much more secure than a, the question was, how do we know that it was the student that signed the paper? Well, I mean, it's an electronic signature, which is, they have to go through the CAPTCHA process and they have to verify and certify that this is my signature. And so once that's uploaded in Image Now, it's got that electronic signature. Secondly, we do get a physical signature because they have to come in to test. They come in to take the tape test in our testing center, and there they sign in the testing center to take the test. So, they sign into class each day when they come in. So we do have their signatures, but as far as the intake form, it's just an electronic signature, which is a perfectly acceptable method to sign documents in our, I guess, in our modern world.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I made it.
Sarah?
Everybody who joined us today. Thank you to the presenters who shared all of the valuable information. Just as one more reminder, the archived webinar and the handouts that you requested today will be on the Excellence in Adult Ed website in a day or two. So please check that out. Otherwise, in about 15 minutes, the next session will be starting on the TABE and CASAS at 10:30. We'll see you there.